Story 7 is called The Perfect School.
Going to boarding school was not my idea of a great time. It was not my idea at all. Whose idea was it? My parents, of course. I knew I was doomed the day the brochure for the perfect boarding school arrived in the mail. The slogan on the cover read, "Why settle for anything less than perfect?" Perfect is my parents' favourite word. Unfortunately, they have me, Brian O'Connor, for a kid, and I am far from perfect. I make my bed sometimes. I take a shower sometimes. And I get my homework done sometimes. And I please my parents never. Before I knew what was happening, my mum and dad had signed me up for the 2-week course. On the way to the train station, I begged. I promised to cut back on TV and video games. I promised I wouldn't tease the dog. I even swore I wouldn't eat 3 Snicker bars for lunch anymore, but it was no use. They hustled me onto the train and told me to watch for the perfect van when I got off at Rockridge Station. I found a seat across the aisle from a kid who appeared as unhappy as I felt. He was reading something I'd never seen before. The brochure from Perfect. "So, what do you think of the place?" I asked. "I think it stinks," he snarled. He threw the brochure down on the train floor. "Perfect. Ha! How about a school to teach parents how to be perfect instead?" "I'd send mine," I agreed. "I'm Brian. My parents are sending me to Perfect too." "I'm CJ. So why did your parents send you for training? What did you do?" "It's more what I didn't do," I explained. "They're always telling me I didn't do this or I forgot to do that. Man, I wake up 5 minutes late and the first thing I hear is that I didn't go to bed early enough and that's why I can't wake up." We complained about our parents until the train man called out, "Rockridge Station, Rockridge." I grabbed my duffel bag and followed CJ to the door. "Here goes nothing," I muttered. About half an hour later, the van pulled through the tall iron gates leading to the school. The driver parked near a row of kids standing behind a sign that said, "Perfect Graduates." These kids were weird. Their line was ruler straight. Each kid wore a grey uniform. Each kid stood up straight and faced forward. Each kid held a grey suitcase in his left hand. They stood in silence, waiting for their parents to pick them up. Is that what my parents want me to turn out like? I asked myself. If it is, they can forget it right now. The driver slid open the door of the van. Another man stood next to him. "I am the director of Perfect Boarding School," the new guy told us. "Line up in order of height. Tallest at the back, shortest at the front. Leave your bags in the van. You won't be needing them here." The director pointed to the first kid in line. "You are number 112, he stated. He gave a number to each of us. I got 116. "Your instructors will call you by number," the director explained. "You will call each other by number. You will call me and your teachers guardian." How am I going to make it through 2 weeks at this place, I thought. This guy is nuts. A car pulled up in front of the other line. The director hurried over to present the parents with their perfect children and get his envelope of money in return. Were any of these kids like me when they got here, I wondered. What did the guardians do to change them? What will they do to me? A shiver raced down my back. Those kids were like robots. Robots! 4 more guardians waited for us inside the door. One of them tapped me on the shoulder. "Follow me," he said in a low voice. He led me down a hall and up a flight of stairs. I caught sight of CJ going into the room on the first floor. "See you later," I started to call. "No talking," the guardian barked. At the top of the stairs, he turned left. A half-open door clicked shut as we passed it. What are they trying to hide, I wonder? Why is every single door shut? Why don't they want us talking to each other? The guardian ushered me into the last room in the hall. "You will wear the clothing in the drawer. You will eat the meal on the tray. You will wait here until you are summoned," he ordered me. Then he shut the door. I checked it. Locked, of course. I studied my new room. It didn't take long. There was a single bed with a small dresser on the side, a table with 1 chair on the other. I wandered over to the dresser and opened the drawers. Only boring stuff. Grey uniforms, toothpaste, towels. May as well check out the food, I decided. A bowl of bumpy grey stuff sat on the table. I scooped up a little with my finger and licked it off. Tasted sort of like oatmeal. Then I heard something, a rustling noise, from the heating vent near the floor. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. Is something down there? I stretched out on the floor and pressed my ear against the vent. The rustling grew louder. Not rustling, I realized. Whispering. Is someone down there? I called out softly. The whispering grew louder. What were they trying to say? Can you hear me? I asked. No talking, a guardian called from down the hall. The whispering stopped. What was that? Did I hear voices from another room? Was someone hiding down there between the walls? No, that was impossible, right? I was happy to find CJ in my first training session. I wanted to ask him if he heard anyone whispering in the walls. Hey, CJ, I said softly. No talking, the guardian in charge of our class ordered. You will answer each question in the workbook on your desk. How can he expect us to answer every question? The thing is more than 100 pages long. I flipped open the workbook. Huh? I thought these questions are strange. What do you call your parents? What is your favorite food? What costumes have you worn for Halloween the last 5 years? Why did the guardians want to know all this stuff? They already knew way too much about me. So maybe I could confuse them a little. I call my father Featherhead and my mother Jellyface, I wrote. My favorite food is lumpy grey oatmeal. Every single Halloween I've dressed up as a 3-humped camel. I tapped CJ on the shoulder and held up my workbook so he could read my answers. CJ snickered. A strong hand grabbed my shoulder. Hard. Number 116. You are a distraction to the others. You will be placed in the special training course. The guardian marched me to the front of the room and hit a small buzzer underneath the desk. Another guardian appeared at the classroom door. Take 116 to the pattern room, the first guardian ordered. His training is being speeded up. As the second guardian herded me out the door, I glanced back at CJ. Sorry, he whispered. My mouth felt dry as I followed the guardian. I tried to swallow, but I couldn't. I didn't know what the special training course was, but I definitely didn't want to be in it. The guardian stopped in front of a wooden bench where a little girl sat swinging her feet. Wait here, he ordered. Then he left. As soon as the guardian turned the corner, the girl leaned over to me. Do you know what they're going to do? She whispered. I heard. The guardian opened the door across the hall and called the girl inside. I slumped back against the wall. I was never going to find out what was going on in this creepy place. I sighed and closed my eyes. Then I heard the whispering again. It was coming from the wall behind my head. The whispers grew stronger. I pressed my ear against the wall. Careful. Don't go into the pattern room, a voice cried. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. Why? What's in the room? Who are you? I demanded. Don't go. The door to the pattern room opened. A guardian ordered me inside. I felt my legs trembling. I hoped the guardian couldn't tell how scared I was. Slowly, I stepped inside the room. It looked like my doctor's office. A scale, an examining table, a counter with some cotton bandages and stuff. Step on the scale, the guardian instructed. Maybe this won't be so bad, I thought. The guardian entered my height and weight into his handheld computer. Then he looped a tape measure around my head and recorded the information. He measured every part of my body, down to my toes. He even measured my tongue. Why does he need all these measurements? I couldn't think of anything he could use them for. Did my special training take some special equipment that fit me exactly? I remembered a movie my teacher showed in science class. Some scientists took wires up to a mouse and then dropped it into a maze. Every time it made a wrong turn, they gave the mouse a shock. Maybe that's what the guardians were going to do to me. Maybe they would give me a shock every time I did something my parents wouldn't like. The guardian picked up a colour wheel from the counter. He held it up to my eyes, trying to find a colour that matched exactly. I felt more confused than ever. When the guardian had recorded every detail about me, he sent me back to my room. Without a guardian escort, I had to find a way to escape. I paused at each door and listened for the voices. I didn't hear anything behind the fourth door. I opened it. An empty office. With a phone. Yes! I grabbed it and dialed my home number. The phone rang once. Please answer, Mum, I silently begged. 2 rings, 3 rings, 4 rings. I heard footsteps approaching the door. Answer, answer! 5 rings. Hello, my mum said breathlessly. Mum, I whispered, you have to get me out of this place. Something weird is going on here. I'm scared. Brian, you just got there yesterday. Give it a chance, Mum replied impatiently. But a cold hand pulled the phone away from me. I spun around. The director stood behind me. Hello, Mrs. Connor, he said. This is the school director. Your son Brian will be ready early. Truly special children often finish our program before the others. Yes, first thing tomorrow will be fine. The director hung up the phone and marched me up to my room. You have made your last error, he told me as he shut the door behind me. What is that supposed to mean? I wondered. Are they still planning on giving me the special training, or are they just sending me home? Unperfect. I flopped down on the bed. Every time I heard footsteps in the hall, I thought a guardian had arrived to take me for my training. I guess I finally dropped off to sleep. I had a dream about looking for my dog at the pound. All the dogs were whimpering. When I woke up, the whimpering continued. I jumped up and scrambled over to the vent. I peered down, far below me. I saw dozens of glittering eyes. Save us, a voice cried. Save us and yourself. Robots, another voice whispered. The school makes a robot of you. They send home the robot in your place. A perfect robot. Then they make you live down here where no one can ever find you. So, that's why the guardians asked those questions and took so many measurements. They were making a robot of me to send home to Mum and Dad. My whole body trembled. I could barely breathe. What do? I demanded. How can I? Shh! Someone's coming, another voice warned. The eyes disappeared back into the darkness. I had to get out of my room. Now! I tore a piece of paper off the sheet lining on one of the dresser drawers. Then I knocked lightly on the door. No answer. I knocked a little louder. Yes, a guardian called. I need to go to the bathroom, I said. He opened the door. As I passed through, I shoved the paper into the lock. The guardian escorted me to the bathroom and then returned me to my room. He shut the door firmly behind me. I waited a few minutes, then I tried the door. It opened. The paper kept the door from locking. I grabbed my spoon from the table and opened the door a crack. When the guardian was looking in the opposite direction, I hurled the spoon down the hall as far as I could. The guardian heard the clattering sound and turned toward it. I slipped out of my room and ran down the hall to the other way. So far, so good. I crept down the stairs. What are you doing down here? Someone demanded. Nothing, I stuttered. Then my eyes adjusted to the dark hallway. CJ, it's you! I was so glad to see him. We've got to get out of this school. Now, I told him. His eyes bulged in surprise. Huh? There are kids trapped behind the walls. We have to save them. And us, I exclaimed, tugging his hand. Follow me, CJ answered. I know where to go. CJ grabbed my arm and led me around the corner and down a short hallway. He pressed on a wall panel and it slid open. Quick, in here, he whispered. It leads outside. Great, I cried. I ducked my head and started into the narrow opening. To my surprise, I saw only darkness and heard whispering voices, shuffling feet. Hey, I spun around to CJ. This doesn't lead outside, I protested. This is where all the kids are hidden. Sorry, CJ replied in a cold, low voice. This is where you will be hidden too, Brian. I work for the Guardians. My job was to guard you. No, I shrieked. No, let me out. Let me out. But to my horror, the wall panel began to slide shut behind me. Thank you very much, Director, my mother said. Brian looks perfect. She admired my grey uniform, my perfectly brushed hair, my perfect smile. I stood straight as an arrow. I faced forward as a good robot should. I held the grey suitcase in my left hand, as all of the robots are programmed. My mother shook hands with the director. She handed him an envelope filled with money. He will be perfect now, the director said. We guarantee it. That was 2 days ago, and I'm trying to be as perfect as I can be because I don't want anyone to catch on. It wasn't easy to pull CJ into the dark chamber and escape before the wall closed up, and it wasn't easy to sneak into the robot room, to grab my robot and drag it up to my room, and then to sneak back into the robot room and pretend to be a robot. Yep, I don't want anyone to catch on that the real Brian O'Connor came home. I don't want anyone to know that I escaped. Someday soon, I'm going back to that place and I'm going to rescue those poor kids, but right now, I'm being as perfect as I can be. Okay? Okay. So I teased the dog this morning and I ate 3 Snicker bars for lunch and I spilled some grape juice on the white couch in the den. But other than that, I've been perfect. Really.
Another story down from Even More Tales to give you goosebumps. I hope you've been enjoying them so far. Please don't hesitate to hit like, hit subscribe, keep up to date with the stories coming out, and don't forget that I have read a whole bunch of different Goosebumps stories right here on the channel. So go back and check out the rest of them because they're all just as good.